Vitamin E acetate in bronchoalveolar lavage fluid associated with EVALI. Definition: the causing agent for the current national outbreak of electronic cigarette or vaping product use association learning here have not been established.
Cram.com. Welcome to another MedCram lecture. We're going to talk about EVALI, or e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury. And this is an update based on the CDC's recent study that was released here at the early part of November. So up to this point, they've been looking at surveys, they've been talking to people. What we've actually got here are 29 bronchoalveolar lavage fluid from patients. So this is not survey, this is actual isolating chemicals that were in bronchoalveolar fluid. So how did they get that? They did a bronchoscopy and they went down into the lungs and they were actually able to wash and suction out the fluid that was in the alveolus, take it back, and then they were able to collect those and then analyze them. And they analyzed it for a number of different compounds. So what did they find? Now it's interesting. What they found in 100% of them, and this is going to be the smoking gun perhaps, in 100% of the samples in these patients who were sick, in 29 of the 2,000 so far at this point, they found vitamin E acetate. Now, interestingly, in 82% of the samples that they got, they found THC, and in 62% of the samples, they found nicotine. Now,
Application is nurse. Detection of toxicant in bronchoalveolar lavage fluids from patients with EVALI can provide staggering information on exposure within the lung.
Time now for Health Watch. The White House is responding to reports of President Trump pulling back from a ban on most flavored e-cigarette products. You'll recall back in September, the president said he was moving forward with the ban in an effort to curb the teen vaping crisis.
Well, now, according to multiple reports, Mr. Trump is holding off on the ban over concern that he could lose support from voters. White House Deputy Press Secretary Judd Deere tells CBS News President Trump is committed to responsibly protecting the health of children and that the rulemaking process is ongoing. And this all comes as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that it has identified a chemical of concern in the deadly vaping outbreak.
CDC officials now say vitamin E acetate, an additive sometimes used in e-cigarette products, may be linked to the national outbreak that sickened thousands and killed at least 42 people across the United States. Joining us from Atlanta to talk more about this is Dr. Ann Schuchat. She's the Principal Deputy Director for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So, Doctor, explain to our viewers what is vitamin E acetate and how is it connected to the cases that we've seen across the U.S.?
Vitamin E acetate is an additive that's often used in food and can sometimes be used in creams or topical formulations, but it was never intended to be inhaled or used in the lungs. And what we're seeing is this oily substance has been included in some e-cigarette liquids or vaping product liquids. It can look a bit like THC oil, and we think that it may be being added to THC-containing fluids to thicken or essentially adulterate the oils and perhaps for profit margin on the part of the dealers. What we're seeing in our investigation is, of course, over 2,000 people now have had serious illness from this e-cigarette or vaping-associated lung injury, and we're finding vitamin E acetate in products, in specimens collected from clinical samples of people who've undergone a procedure called bronchoscopy. So we, out of 29 patients in 10 different states, we found the vitamin E acetate in the fluid collected from around the lung. This is the first time this potential culprit has been found directly at the site of injury in the lungs. It's also been found in a number of products collected from patients with the disease, tested either through
Pros and cons. They included a bronchoscopy study to see how cigarettes affect the pulmonary microenvironments.
Deaths in the United States have potentially been tied to vaping marijuana and a mysterious lung illness. Now the FDA may be getting closer to nailing down the cause.
Julie Unruh is here now with more. Julie.
This caper is far from solved, you guys, but they're getting one step closer because recent testing out of New York State shows vitamin E acetate has been found in vaping products containing THC, that's the active chemical in cannabis. If it's vitamin E oils lining your lungs that create the coughing and labored breathing symptoms, the question for the professionals is, how did it get there?
THC being vaped appears to be more harmful to the lungs than smoking marijuana. But again, there's almost no research to back up that statement. It's just something that clinicians have started to see.
Dr. Laura Crotty-Alexander is a lung doctor who's been tracking e-cigarettes since 2013. She says today's revelation that vitamin E acetate has been found in lab tests brings researchers one step closer to figuring out how 2 people died and over 200 have become sick from some sort of mystery lung illness in the United States.
It's a dramatic development.
Use of leak to Ecuador. Researchers collection fluids from EVALI patients who were part of an ongoing smoking study involving smoker exclusion, use of cigarette or vaping product, and exclusive cigarette smoker who began in performing isotoped lithium mass spectrometry to measure several priority toxins. Vitamin E acetate, vegetable oil, medium chain triglyceride oil, coconut oil, petroleum distillate, and diluent turpentine.
They analyzed biological fluid, and this fluid was obtained from the lungs of people who had confirmed vaping-associated lung injury. And this fluid was found to contain vitamin E acetate, which is a chemical that they had already found in many of the electronic cigarette liquids that had been analyzed several weeks ago. So they confirmed that this chemical now is in the lungs of people who had used these vaping liquids in their devices. And what CDC did recognize, and this is important for everyone to know, that finding the vitamin E acetate in the e-cigarette fluid doesn't tell us at all what chemicals were inhaled by the people using these vaping devices, because you gotta remember, it's in the liquid form, and then you heat it to very high temperatures and you aerosolize it, it changes the chemical constituents in that fluid. And I think it's going to be something else that will do it. This is not the answer. This is an important step. I think it's important that they confirmed that many of the fluids that were associated with causing lung injury contain this vitamin E acetate, but my guess, and I think their guess is as well, this is not the end of the story. Vitamin E acetate is approved for use for some ingested medicines and supplements, and also more commonly
Conclusion. We concluded that vitamin E acetate is a potential causal agent of EVALI, and that is an important discovery that can make decisions about how best to regulate the rapidly evolving cigarette industry.
There's breaking news tonight about the serious lung injuries and deaths linked to vaping. More than 2,000 people have been treated. 40 patients have died. Today, a breakthrough. Dr. John LaPook has new information on a possible cause.
The CDC studied 29 samples collected from the lungs of patients suffering from the vaping illness. They found vitamin E acetate in all 29 samples. THC, the active ingredient in cannabis, was found in 23. After months of investigation, the CDC says this is the first time they have detected what they call a toxin of concern. Vitamin E acetate is used to dilute THC oils in order to improve profits. It is used safely in supplements and creams, but when it is heated and inhaled, it is thought to cause a chemical burn injury in the lungs. A clue came 2 months ago when vitamin E acetate was first found in product samples in a New York State lab. Dr. Howard Zucker is the state health commissioner.
So this is very much a sleuth mission. Nobody really knew what was the cause. And then you started to pull these little pieces together and figure out what is the common thread here.
Both the CDC and Dr. Zucker say this is not the end of the story.
We have to better understand the pathology of how the vitamin E that gets into the lungs and causes the damage to the lungs occur.
John joins us to answer just that question. So how does this vitamin E acetate become so dangerous?
What seems to be happening here, Nora, is that the vitamin E acetate is causing a chemical burn in that paper-thin, fragile part of the lungs where oxygen enters the bloodstream, kind of like what mustard gas did in World War I. Now, that burn causes the oxygen level in these patients to drop to dangerous levels.
All right, John LaPook, thank you.